Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotatar Shata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotatar Shata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki. Navadvip Dham Ki. Mayapur Dham Ki. Yamuna Maya Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Brihad Mridanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Reading from the Srimad Bhāgavatam, chapter 3, canto 3, chapter 18, text 11. Etevayam nyasa hararaso kasam. Etevayam nyasa hararaso kasam. Gatar yoga dayajavitaste. Gatar yoga dayajavitaste. Tistamahe tapikatanchirajo. Tistamahe tapikatanchirajo. Steyam kvayamo balinot padyavairam. Steyam kvayamo balinot padyavairam. Etevayam nyasa hararaso kasam. Gatar yoga dayajavitaste. Tistame tapikatanchirajo. Steyam kvayamo balinot padyavairam. Etevayam nyasa hararaso kasam. Gatar yoga dayajavitaste. Tishtamahe tabikatanshirajo. Steyam kvayamo balinot padyavairam. Etevayam nyasa hararaso kasam. Gatar yoga dayajavitaste. Tishtamahe tapikatanshirajo. Steyam kvayamo balinot padyavairam. Ete, ourselves. Vayam, we. Nyasa of the charge. Haraha, thieves. Rasa okasam, of the inhabitants of Rasatala. Gatahriyaha, shameless. Gadaya, by the mace. Javita, chaste. Te, your. Tishtamahe, we shall stay. Atapi, nevertheless. Katanchit, somehow. Ajo, on the battlefield. Stayam, we must stay. Qua, where? Yamaha, can we go? Balina, with a powerful enemy. Utpadya, having created. Vairam, enmity. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Certainly we have stolen the charge of the inhabitants of Rasatala and have lost all shame. Although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time, because having created enmity with a powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. Repeat after me. Certainly we have stolen the charge of the inhabitants of Rasatala and have lost all shame. Although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time, because having created enmity with a powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. Purport. The demon should have known that God cannot be driven out of any place, for He is all-pervading. Demons think of their possessions as their property, but actually everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can take anything at any time He likes. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Litam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutam Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nasta Price Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridantasto Hyabhadrani Vidunoti Surhit Satam Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. So, first I'm seeking the blessings of all the senior devotees, especially His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu. And This verse is a little interesting. I was a little confused at first. Lord Vrahadev is currently, as we know, taking the earth out of the waters of the Garbhodaka ocean. And now he's been stopped by Hiranyaksha, and he's saying, certainly we have stolen the charge of the inhabitants of your Rasatala and have lost all shame. So I was thinking Krishna is actually most expert at playing these roles. And he's also the best actor, so any kind of movie that we watch nowadays, anything we are totally bewildered by or blown away, that's actually all within Krishna as well, all these skills and abilities. And so even here, he's playing his part and saying, they've lost all shame, we're taking this planet back and we're taking it out of the water. And I also notice he's the most chivalrous as well. He's saying, although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time, because having created enmity with the powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. So chivalry can be also valorous, not just technically, showing nice manners to Madajis or females, but it's also valorous, like a knightly behavior. And so he was challenged by Hiranyaksha, and Krishna, being so valorous, being the most valorous, he had no other place to go. So as Lord Vrahadev, he stood his ground, and instead of the flight action, he took the fight action. So I first wanted to provide some examples of chivalry as well that Krishna does. The first that came to my mind was the hunchback lady in the Krishna book, Kubja, in Mathura. And Krishna's walking through Mathura, and she has so much chandan she's planning to offer to Kamsa. And Krishna goes to her and asks for the chandan, and she, puts the chandan on Krishna. And so she's, hunchbacked, Kubja. She's, not very externally attractive, although she has internal attraction to Krishna. And so Krishna steps on her toes and I think pulls her ears and, the ultimate back crack, and pulls her up straight. Yeah, ultimate chiropractor. And pulls her up straight, and she turns into this beautiful, magnificent woman. And she becomes immediately so attracted to Krishna after putting chandan on his body and after him blessing her. So she begs for his physical association, and Krishna's chivalry is displaying, yes, I will fulfill my word. He makes his promise, and after he deals with Kamsa, it's kind of like, any type of heroic story you see, but it's the actual best kind of heroic story. So, after that, Krishna comes back and fulfills her promise, and she wants him to stay longer, but he doesn't stay, he leaves after one night. And I heard actually that this can represent, Kubja can represent Mother Bhumi, Mother Earth. And so Krishna comes and, Earth is dying and really in a terrible condition, and Krishna comes, straightens her up. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Krishna comes and establishes the principles of religion. And so Krishna comes and he fulfills the Mother Earth's desire to straighten out these principles of religion, and then he leaves. He doesn't stay for more than what is needed. And another example I thought I'd share, which was a nice excerpt, if that's okay to read from Nectar of Devotion. When a friend wants to satisfy Krishna by performing some chivalrous activities, the friend becomes the challenger and Krishna himself becomes the opponent, or else Krishna may give audience to the fighting, and by his desire another friend becomes the opponent. A friend once challenged Krishna thus, "My dear Madhava, you are very restless because you think that no one can defeat you. But if you do not flee from here, then I shall show you how I can defeat you, and my friends will be very satisfied to see this." Krishna and Sridham were very intimate friends. Yet Sridham, out of anger with Krishna, challenged him. When both of them began to fight, all the friends on the bank of the Yamuna enjoyed the wonderful fighting of the two friends. They prepared some arrows for mock fighting, and Krishna began to throw his arrows at Sridham. Sridham began to block these arrows by whirling his pole, and by Sridham's chivalrous activities, Krishna became very satisfied. Such mock fighting generally takes place among chivalrous persons and creates wonderful excitement for all viewers. So this is kind of ironically similar to this pastime that's going on right now. Krishna's friend is kind of giving him some, as we would say, trash talk. You're very restless because you think that no one can defeat you, but if you don't flee from here, then I'm going to show you how I can defeat you. So Hiranyaksha is kind of acting in that same attitude. So what is the difference? What is the difference between devotees that are acting in this way and demons who are acting in this way? The difference is that actually, in this scenario, it's a little more complicated, but in general, the devotees are not envious of Krishna. They're always wanting to please Krishna and enjoy with Krishna. So if that means, mock fighting with Krishna or fighting with Krishna, then that's what they'll do. Or, trash talking Krishna. And the demons are completely envious of Krishna, and they wholeheartedly are full of anger and greed and lust. And so the different internal moods are coming out. But it's also interesting in this scenario, I was reflecting on how fortunate Jai and Vijay must have been to be performing these kinds of pastimes. so ironic that the best devotee can actually be the best demon. Not even the demons themselves can become better demons than the devotees. And so how amazing it was. I'm not sure if it was Jai or Vijay that was Hiranyaksha, but how fortunate they were to exalt these pastimes with Krishna. So similarly, the Sridham, fighting with Krishna, Jai and Vijay were also experiencing these kind of interactions, although displaying externally how Krishna deals with these demons. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says here that everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can take anything at any time he likes. So we're living on borrowed property. This earth, this universe, it's all temporary and it's rented. It's been rented out. Even this body, it's just a rented space. So we hear so often Srila Prabhupada giving that example of living in an apartment, and that apartment at some point you have to get evicted from, or your lease is up and you have to go. So you don't have a choice. You can't, whether by force or by choice, you have to leave the building. So similarly, we can really practice how to prepare these things. Krishna, as it's saying, Krishna owns everything. In the Sri Upanishad, it's saying that as well. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. So one should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yakincha jagatam jagat tena chaktena bunjita madgrida kasyasviddanam. So these demons, they don't actually accept that what they have is enough. If you see in Nectar of Instruction as well, it talks about at least 3 of these things that are unfavorable to our devotional service. And one of them is atyahara, eating more than required or collecting more funds than necessary. Or prayasas, which is, over-endeavoring for mundane things. And lolium as well, having greed for unnecessary, mundane, material gains. So I was reflecting on this idea. I heard a story of this billionaire, the richest guy in the world at some point. And some reporter came up to him. Excuse me, wanted to ask him questions. And what is your secret? How can we become like you? How can we attain wealth like you can? How can we be so opulent? And he replied with one word. He just said, more, more. And the person who is sharing the story, His Holiness Giriraj Swami, was saying how sad that is, that you could have all the money in the world, but you still want more. You're so dissatisfied still. And so in this practice, whether we receive from the sanction of Krishna billions of dollars or whether we're in poverty, we should always be remaining atmaram, self-satisfied, knowing that we're getting what we are deserving of, and we shouldn't be desiring for more. Because the second we start becoming desirous for more, we begin to gain more and more attachment and lose this idea of serving Krishna. So sometimes actually, instead of being self-satisfied, we also have the tendency to compare ourselves with others. What's going on around us externally? He has more material opulence than me. I'm better than that person. Even in devotional life, sometimes we can get in that mentality. And when we start to feel this way, we identify more with our false ego. And that's the nature of demons. To be comparing, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he is my enemy and I have killed him, I have conquered him. So these demons are never satisfied with what they have, no matter what kind of demon you are. And there's different kinds of demons. You have, Aghasura, who's the serpent, just lying 8 miles long and waiting for the cowherd boys to just stroll on in. And then you have Pralambasura, who disguises himself as a devotee and tries to get in through that way. And you have Kamsa, who's always fearful of Krishna and thinking of Krishna at all times in a fearful way. Hiranyaksha, who's incredibly intelligent and who's actually hidden as a devotee, of course, but externally very intelligent, very wealthy, very powerful. And Ram Roy, His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu mentioned Panchaka yesterday, who's wanting to be Krishna, who's trying to pose himself as Vishnu. So even if these demons are intelligent or pious or mystic practitioners, they have envy of Krishna or they're riding on the chariot of the mind. So in the Bhāgavatam, it's also said that, all the demigods and their qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities, even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. He must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? So we've heard that multiple times, but it's a profound point that a devotee who might have a fair amount of faults is actually on a much higher level than someone who's posing as a pious person, because that person is still envious of Krishna, and they're, as it says here, being a servant of Krishna's external energy, a servant of Maya. So I saw this picture the other day, and it was I think a Buddhist monk, and then there was a woman sitting next to him, and she was very underdressed, and very like enthusiastic in the picture, and one monk is standing behind, very like grave, very steady, and the other monk is just like this, just staring at the woman, and the comment said, "Years of meditation wasted." So all these things, if we don't become a devotee of Krishna, if we're not trying to serve Krishna, it can be totally useless. There's no point. You're no better than, anyone who's being profoundly externally an atheist. It's a profound point as well. It made me think of that pastime with Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there was this yogi who came and was posing himself as Vishnu. And so somehow, some way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a magistrate, so he was contacted for things like this, issues, and he was contacted, and he comes to figure it out, and this person's a total poser and a phony, and we need to put him in prison. So they put him in prison, and the yogi somehow curses him that he's going to get sick, or his family, something like that. And he and his family started to get sick. And his wife was saying, "Stop, you just let this yogi go, You put Vishnu in prison. How could you do this?" And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, "No, I don't care what happens to me. This person is an imposter, and he must, pay the consequences for this." And sooner or later, somehow, some way, the yogi died. He drank poison or something. I think they cut his hair too, and he lost his mystic potency. So devotees will always prevail, no matter what material position you're in. If you're material weaker than the demons, devotees will always prevail. Why? Because Krishna's on their side. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. It's saying, where there's Krishna and Arjuna, there's victory and morality. There's no doubt about it. So even if we're in a very poor material place, we should be very satisfied because we've received this opportunity to perform devotional service. And we've received this opportunity to interact with devotees and chant Hare Krishna. These things are very rare. And sometimes when we're getting in the mechanical motions of things, we can forget how important this is, and how elevated this practice is, and how fortunate we are by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and his very devoted disciples and followers to be practicing this and trying to spread this knowledge. Another example I thought of was the Juhu story. You see what all these devotees went through. So much corruption that was going on, trying to take this land back. So to fill you in about the Juhu story is it was a temple that Srila Prabhupada wanted to build on this land in Bombay. And so they bought the land from someone named Mr. Nair. And this Nair actually ended up cheating them. And he wasn't actually properly selling them the land. He was going to try and sell it to someone else after he got the money from them. And so continuously, he had so many connections materially. There's so much material power that he could bring, and was trying to pull devotees off the land. They would burn down the temples that they were building up temporarily. But still the devotees prevailed. So we can use this as an example to always remain self-satisfied in our service. And there's a pastime in that Srila Prabhupada has a disciple who he was meeting with, and his parents were there. And this disciple just became a brahmachari, and his parents are, sitting in the room and giving a, questionable face. And there's a senior disciple there as well. So Srila Prabhupada was preaching to them. And eventually he mentioned that a devotee has no ambition. And so the parents were kind of like confused, like what is he talking about? And a senior disciple came and tried to correct Prabhupada and said, well, what he's trying to say is that the disciples, they don't have material ambition. They have spiritual ambition. Prabhupada said, no, they have no ambition. Their only ambition is to serve Krishna. So that self-satisfaction from just wanting to do service, and we have such an amazing example like His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu, just wanting to serve the Harinam every day. So just wanting to go out and share this and spread this knowledge with other people. That's Atmaram. It's self-satisfied. It's even when you get to that point, there's not even having like extreme spiritual desires. It's just a desire to serve. So, of course, as I was saying, Krishna owns everything and he can take anything at any time, as what Srila Prabhupada was mentioning in this purport. So, if we're getting evicted, as I was saying, we don't have any choice. It can come at any time. Sometimes you get a notice. Sometimes they come in and just kick you out through gentrification and things like that. So we need to be prepared for that time. Especially as a youth, me, myself, I don't like think about the fact that I could die at any time. Just recently I had a good family friend, intelligent, going to Harvard Law School, married, young, late 20-year-old, and he just died out of nowhere after running an Ironman. So we can never know what's in store for us because Krishna is actually in control of everything. Krishna takes his hand in anything that goes on. So it's best to be prepared, and we shouldn't be wasting any of our time because we don't know if we'll even get a notice. Maharaj Parikshit was very fortunate. He was told that he had 7 days to live, so what did he do? He said, okay, let's hear the Bhāgavatam. I'd like to understand what's the best thing to do for someone who's about to die. And I think His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu mentioned this yesterday in his class, that the thing that surprised Maharaj Parikshit the most was that everyone doesn't think that they're going to die, even though everyone's going to die. And some people, even on the streets, when we're like distributing books, it seems like so morbid. You get into a conversation with someone who's interested, and sometimes, they'll be like, well, why do you have to talk about death? Why don't you talk about living a good and positive life, a moralistic life, kind of like a sattvic life, But actually, you should be facing the truth of things. We're so conditioned in this, especially in America, to kind of like repress things, whether it's in school, whether it's emotional, or whether it's actually facing the reality of things. You see it in the media, you see it in people every day, psychologically. We're repressing things all the time because we don't want to face this reality that we're going to have to die someday. And we're going to have to lose all these things that we've been working so hard to gain materially. Money, cars, beautiful wife, family. All these things are temporary and it will go away just like that. So it reminded me of the verse in the Bhāgavatam. I really like this verse. Ayurharati vaipumsam udyan astam chayanaso tisyarte yakshano nita utamashloka vartaya. So it's saying both by rising and by setting, the sun continuously is decreasing the duration of life of everyone except for the one who is utilizing its time by discussing the topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So that's a profound point. The fact that it's also in what we recite every day, Nasta Prayasvabhadeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Simply by hearing and rendering service to the Bhagavatam and the person Bhagavat as well, one can actually almost fully vanquish the anarthas that are resting in the heart. And actually that verse itself is referring to Nishta, which is faith, having firm, steady faith. But actually, all you have to do after that is continue to keep hearing. It's not that we need anything else. So rendering service to the person in the book Bhagavat is pretty much the foundation of our practice. And that's what will actually annihilate the anarchas that are within our heart gradually. But of course, we have to be patient. It doesn't just happen overnight. Krishna can either give it to you immediately, or Krishna can wait till the time of death to give it to you. But either way, we shouldn't be wasting our time. I mean, even me, myself, there's so many like little pockets of time that I have where I waste it. I could be chanting, or I could be, trying to memorize a verse. So even those little pockets of time, these are the little things. My coach in college, he would call something called edging. So it's never enough to just do the basis of things. It's never enough to just like do the, normal regular things. For us, for example, it's following the 4 regular principles, chanting 16 rounds, getting up early in the morning. But edging, he referred to as going over and beyond, because you have that desire. You have that desire to get better, to grow. And so he always emphasized that. I was really grateful for that, because it's so easy for us to just be like, okay, well, at least like even in college, even now, but when I was playing in a sport on a team, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to get up. I'm just going to get up like 10 minutes before and get ready, and then I'll go to practice and go to class. And then, my coach would reinstill that in me, like, no, you should be going over and beyond and trying to get better every day. So similarly, in devotional service, we can dovetail that mentality to, maybe chanting an extra round or two on the subway train, or, finding more time to read, or finding someone else to read with, or, finding another service to do for devotees. Stepping up to do service at a time we don't want to. Someone comes up and asks me to do service, sometimes I'm like, I have things to do. But do I really have things to do? It could take 2 minutes. Simply by just helping a devotee in that mood when you finally choose to do it, it's like such a nice thing. It reminds me of what Krishna says in the Gita, in the mode of goodness. It tastes like poison at first. Chanting the holy name, doing service, it tastes like poison at first, but actually it's nectar at the end. And you talk to so many of these senior devotees that have made it through so many things and just walked through the fire. They're so fixed because they don't have a desire to waste their time. They don't have a desire to do anything else besides trying to grow in spiritual life, and that comes with edging. So, nice thing to think of. And I wanted to read this purport, because this is it's really profound. So, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing the topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Purport. This verse indirectly confirms the greater importance of utilizing the human form of life to realize our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord by acceleration of devotional service. Time and tide wait for no man, so the time indicated by the sunrise and the sunset will be uselessly wasted if such time is not properly utilized for realizing identification of spiritual values. Even a fraction of the duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. Human life is simply awarded to a living entity, jiva, so that he can realize his spiritual identity and his permanent source of happiness. A living being, especially the human being, is seeking happiness, because happiness is the natural situation of a living entity. But he is vainly seeking happiness in the material atmosphere. So that's the condition we've been in for who knows how long. We've been continuously chewing the chewed, trying to grab water. And you see these large demons, they're totally dissatisfied still with what they have, so they want more and more and more. They need more control, they need more money. They need more ways to, find ways to tell you what to do and to gain more material things, feel more empowered, feel like I'm the man, I'm the doer of things. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. So, bewildered by the false ego, the living entity thinks himself the doer, when in actuality things are just being carried out by the modes of material nature. A living being is constitutionally a spiritual spark of the complete whole, and his happiness can be perfectly perceived in spiritual activities. The Lord is the complete spirit whole, and his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and personality are all identical with him. Once a person comes into contact with any one of the above-mentioned energies of the Lord through the proper channel of devotional service, the door to perfection is immediately opened. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has explained such contact in the following words. Endeavors in devotional service are never baffled, nor is there failure. A slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the great ocean of material fears. So, even engaging in devotional service once, I heard this story, I'm not sure how bona fide it is, but I heard this story of someone who had a near-death experience, and they went to Yamaraj, and they asked him, what did he do that was nice? Did you do anything that was pious in your life? And somehow, some way, he remembered that he waved like friendly, nicely one time to the Hare Krishnas. And all of a sudden, like the others in the assembly just like bowed their head in obeisance, which is incredible. Can you imagine just waving to the Hare Krishnas and you're getting that much benefit? So what to speak of us? Of course, we shouldn't take advantage of this, just like, oh, well, Prabhu, I'm chanting 16 rounds a day. I'm going to be okay, Because that's not the case, as it says in this purport of this verse. Krishna can take away anything at any time he wants. So the second we have pride, he can take it away. Just like that example, even with Radharani. He felt like Radharani had pride, and so he left. So what to speak of us? Krishna's obviously omnipotent and can pay attention to all of us, but someone as significant as me is thinking that I'm okay, I'm chanting my rounds and I'm following the principles, so I can just take it easy. No, we should have a sense of urgency, and we should have a sense of, okay, there's no loss or diminution, but I'm terrified of going back to where I was. I'm terrified of going back. Because operating that consciousness was actually so much suffering. And it's even worse because you think that you're enjoying. It's like the example with the camel chewing the thorns and tasting its own blood. As a highly potent drug injected intravenously acts at once on the whole body, the transcendental topics of the Lord injected through the ear by the pure devotee of the Lord can act very efficiently. Oral realization of the transcendental messages implies total realization, just as fructification of one part of a tree implies fructification of all other parts. This is the purport to text 2.3.17 in the Bhāgavatam. Yeah. Ayur Harati Vai Pumsam. Yeah. Transcendental heroin, injecting the nectar of the Bhāgavatam into our veins. This realization, for a moment in the association of pure devotees like Shukadev Goswami, prepares one's complete life for eternity, and thus the sun fails to rob the pure devotee of his duration of life. Inasmuch as he is constantly busy in devotional service of the Lord, purifying his existence. Death is a symptom of the material infection of the eternal living being. Only due to the material infection is the eternal living entity subjected to the law of birth, death, old age, and disease. The materialistic way of pious activities like charity is recommended in the Smriti Shastras, as quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Money given in charity to a suitable person is guaranteed bank balance in the next life. Such charity is recommended to be given to a Brahmana. If the money is given in charity to a non-Brahmana without Brahminical qualification, the money is returned in the next life in the same proportion. If it is given in charity to a half-educated Brahmin, even then the money is returned double. If the money is given in charity to a learned and fully qualified Brahmin, the money is returned 100 and 1,000 times. And if the money is given to a Vega Pariga, one who has actually factually realized the path of the Vedas, it is returned by unlimited multiplication. So Srila Prabhupada's mentioning all these ways to donate and gain these things materially. And you see at the end that when you give it to a fully qualified and learned Brahmana, it's returned by unlimited multiplication. So what to speak of a pure devotee? The ultimate end of Vedic knowledge is realization of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedesh chai chasavarayar aham eva vedyaha. There is a guarantee of monies being returned if given in charity, regardless of the proportion. Similarly, a moment passed in the association of a pure devotee by hearing and chanting the transcendental messages of the Lord is a perfect guarantee for eternal life, for returning home back to Godhead. Madhamagatva punarjanma navidyate. In other words, a devotee of the Lord is guaranteed eternal life. A devotee's old age or disease in the present life is but an impetus to such guaranteed eternal life. So these demons, they're not actually spending their time properly. You see all these people working so hard, they're like, fully engaged in Rajagun and maybe even sometimes mode of goodness and thinking and being philosophical. But they're not actually inquiring as to the fact that maybe I'm a servant of God. Maybe I'm actually not God. So they're continuously wasting their time to try and grow their own position. But that's not going to come with them at death. There's this nice story of a king with his 4 wives. And the king's on his deathbed. And so he's wanting someone, he's afraid of dying. So he wants someone to come with him to the afterlife. So he goes to his first wife, who's incredibly attractive. And he brings her around everywhere and he asks her to come. And she says, no, I can't come. So the king's devastated. So he goes to his next wife. And his next wife, he always, would decorate her and spoil her and give her nice things. And so he brought her in and he asked her, will you come with me to the afterlife? She said, no, I can't come with you. The king is further devastated. So he goes to his other wife, his third wife, who is always there for him no matter what, providing him love, providing him support. And he asks her, I'm really scared of being alone. Will you come with me to the afterlife? And the third wife says, no, but I'll attend your funeral. I'll honor your death. And so the king is sitting there so devastated. And then all of a sudden his first wife runs in, the first wife that he married, and says, I'll come with you. I'm with you for eternity. I'll come with you. And the king is totally experiencing so much remorse because he's realizing, oh my God, what have I been doing? I've been neglecting you my whole life. So these other 3 wives are actually symbolic. All 4 of them are symbolic. The first wife, who's really attractive and you show around and bring her to places, that's like our material possessions. And so although they're nice to show off to people, I know they're nice in logic, we're not going to take these things at death. So as devotees, we already understand this concept, but it's a nice way to put it into practice and put it into thinking. The third wife is representing our own body. We decorate our own body with so many things. But at the end of the day, it's just going to rot along with her body or it's going to be taken with someone else. Just like the third wife. She actually said, I'm going to remarry when you die. Ouch. So the other wife is representing our friends and family. Our family attachments, they're there, they support you, but they're not coming with you. The first wife is your soul. That's who we are, is the soul of the body. So we actually have to realize and practice the fact and continuously try to apply the understanding that we're not this body, no matter what we're doing. And that's a proper way of utilizing our time and actually getting rid of these demoniac mentalities in the world by going out and preaching. Because the more we practice these things and the more we hear about the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the more empowered we become. The more mercy that we receive from the pure devotees by hearing them submissively. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena seveya. Upadikshantite gyanam gyaninas tattva darshana. We need to inquire submissively and render service. We can become empowered that way. And we can stop wasting our time with other things, scrolling on our phone for too long or, having prajapa, So we can practice these things more and more so we can go out and share this knowledge with others to destroy these demoniac mentalities that are currently in this age. So that's all I had to offer today. Thank you for tolerating and hearing and allowing me to serve the Srimad Bhāgavatam. Please forgive me if I've created any offenses or if I have said anything that goes against the Siddhanta of our predecessing acharyas. So if anyone has any comments or questions.
Where did you hear that story about the person waving at Yamaraj?
It was a conversation, I think, with, it was here, it was with either Chaitanya or Nate, but they were talking about that story.
Because it sounds like it's a mixture of 2 stories that I heard.
Okay.
One recently told just before the book marathon, actually, where Yamaraj helped distribute some books. That someone came and I heard something like this. He waved or was favorable somehow to the devotees. And then he died. And then the Yamaraj was saying, all right, you get one more chance. You have to go directly to the temple and you have to pick up a Bhagavad Gita and you have to follow it. And then you can go back. And so and it comes because this guy just came to the temple and just like wanted a Bhagavad Gita really bad. The devotee's like, what's going on? And he told this whole story. And then there's another story which maybe Ramarik Prabhu can tell better, but it's where a fallen disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he died, and he was basically on the funeral pyre, about to be burned, and so he was during that time his soul was in front of Yamaraj. So then Yamaraj asked him, did you do any good thing? And I guess Yamaraj is asking everyone that, so this could be a third valid story. But he said, yes, I surrendered to a guru. And then when he said who it was, then all of the, in Yamaraj, even Yamaraj, like they're offering their obeisances to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then, maybe Ramra, you remember the details better?
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appeared there in the court of Yamaraj, and Yamaraj makes pranam to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who Yamaraj asks, now what is to be done? In other words, the decision of what's going to happen to this soul is your decision because you're his spiritual master. And he starts chastising his disciple. Why did you give up the regulative principles? Why did you stop chanting? And the disciple is begging forgiveness. And then he instructs him that you go back down to the earth planet and you take shelter of one of his leading disciples who is still present. And you go and take shelter of him and never leave his association. And at that, he wakes up on the funeral pyre and just starts shouting at the top of his lungs the name of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And everybody there is just like freaked out. It's like a dead body came back to life. And because the instruction was go immediately to the mat of this senior disciple. He didn't go home. And then he appeared at the temple and started telling the whole story to the senior spiritual master there, the Acharya, who told him midway through, you don't have to tell me anymore. I already know. I've already been informed. So then he stayed very sincerely for another 8 years, and then he left his body.
Amazing.
Hare Krishna.
I think there's another story too. There's a book distribution story, and this devotee was at an airport distributing books. Natabara, you wanted to say something? Okay. This devotee was distributing books, and he goes up to this guy who seems really wealthy, and he's trying to talk to him and ask him questions, and the guy's like, yeah, get away, I don't want to talk to you. And he wouldn't stop, so the guy finally threw him a $100 bill. He's like, fine, go, take it, get away from me. And he just threw the devotee a $100 bill. And the same guy comes back the next day, and he goes up to the devotee, and he's like totally bewildered, eyes are bursting out of his brain. And he's looking at him, he's saying, I had a near-death experience. And the devotee's like, oh, okay. This is the same devotee as well. So he found the same devotee that was at the airport. And he said, these beings, they were trying to pull me out of my body. And for some reason, I felt that the only reason they didn't take me out of my body was because I helped you. Just implicitly, I had this feeling. And so the devotee pulls out one of the Bhāgavatam, maybe it was a second chance or actual canto, the 6th canto, and shows them the Yamadutas. And the guy goes, oh, that's them! That was who they were! Those were the people that were trying to take me out of my body. And he took a bunch of books after that. So, yeah, it's amazing how even doing a little bit of service, Krishna's so merciful. But yeah, I thought I'd add that
So
comment.
waving to people at Harinam is a good thing.
Yeah.
If they wave back.
Right. Yeah, right. But yeah, thank you, Natabara, for correcting that story. Yeah.
Whisper something in Phil's ear. Phil whispers on the Suraj. Suraj whispers something to me. I whisper to you, and then you say it, and it's completely
Could be
different.
so totally different. Yeah, you're right. Please forgive me.
I also had the question. So we always hear this. They don't have good, like famous verse. They don't have any good qualities, and the devotees have every good quality, but it seems like they don't have good qualities. So it seems like this is very easy to twist and manipulate people with. And what does it really mean? I mean, how can you say someone doesn't really have good qualities if, like, so they may not. What does the verse say? The verse I'm talking about, Mano Ratena.
Yeah.
They're just on the chariot of their mind. So, but if they're not, they're not a devotee of the Lord. But if they're like, a tolerant, smart person or something like that, how can you say that it's not a good quality? I don't, I can't grasp that.
Well, to my understanding, there's materially good qualities and then there's spiritual qualities. And so real qualities are in spirituality and surrendering and serving Krishna and trying to be a devotee. So even though someone... Yeah, it's Yasyati Bhaktir Bhagavatya Kinchana. It's in the 5th canto, 18th chapter, I think it's verse 12. But I think to this understanding, it's at the end it's asking the question, how can there be any good qualities in such a man? Good qualities might be, understanding that's actually spiritual qualities. Transcendental, real qualities is serving Krishna. Everything else is based on the material platform. But maybe Ram Roy Prabhu would like to elaborate.
My question is, how is it based on the material platform? And that has to be expanded in my mind a little bit. That makes it bad. Like you would basically, so there's a humanist and then there's a devotee. And the humanist saying, this is where the argument is coming from. I'm good because I'm looking for the welfare of people and this and that. And you're just, they could even say, you're like neglecting the welfare of people. And in one sense we could say, well, we're doing their higher welfare for them. But then the question of good or bad, I don't know.
Ram Roy Prabhu?
The first part of the consideration, perhaps this would be useful. Prabhupada would say that without Krishna consciousness, you can have so many good things, but it's like so many zeros. But if you gather so many zeros together and you put the one of Krishna in front, then it becomes hundreds of millions. And at the last public program that Prabhupada gave in Juhu Beach, Mumbai in April 1977, there was many sophisticated persons there, and Prabhupada was speaking very, very strongly. Anything, without Krishna consciousness, everything is a failure. And one, very well-mannered and high-placed woman, not angrily, but just, put the question, what good will this do for people who are suffering? And Prabhupada said, your idea of compassion is like blowing on a boil. So the humanist idea, are they saving people from repeated birth and death? Are they saving people from a meeting with Yamaraj? And what to speak if, he hadn't flipped the guy $100, he would have been taken to the court of Yamaraj. And there was Srila Prabhupada saying praising his Guru Maharaj in 1968 in Los Angeles. The Bengali, the sage is blessing 4 people, the prince, the yogi, the devotee, and the butcher. And for the butcher, neither live nor die. Your living is horrible all day, just, the ghastly scene. And after death, you can't even begin to understand the extent of that suffering. So we're saving people from that. So the so-called humanist or the so-called person with good qualities, how could there be any good qualities in such a person? Because they're lacking knowledge of what's pleasing to Krishna. At the end of the day, the final conclusion is this pleasing to Krishna? In the Shishastakam, the last chapter 20 of the Antya-lila, Prabhupada says, a devotee has no sense in understanding what is happiness unless if he understands that it makes Krishna happy. If Krishna happiness is to give me unhappiness, then that unhappiness is the greatest of my happiness.
So to clarify that, the people who are engaging in materially good, pious activities, it's just like a temporary benefit. So it might be considered like being in the mode of goodness, but it's not actually...
What is the underlying ulterior motive?
Right. Krishna's not in the center, so it's just kind of a selfish motive in a sense.
A good test is when they come in contact with the representative or Krishna, see the Harinam, the book distributors, the devotees, what is their reaction? They could be all like, suave and sophisticated in their society circle, but when they have an opportunity to be genuinely, not, like in a haphazard or immature way that sometimes we, deal with such people. But if they're given the real thing and at the end of the day, with all their intelligence and consideration, they reject Krishna consciousness, they want to stay within their materialistic orbit, then that verse applies. They're hovering on the mental platform. What's the use of their good qualities? Also, the king with a big crown, turban, if he doesn't use that head to bow down to the Lord, then that weight will just drown him in the ocean of material existence. There's a whole bunch of verses. The eyes, which are very beautiful, but they don't see the Lord. They're like dead eyes, plumes of the peacock. What is the point? Anyway, we should be very careful how we deal with such people.
Okay. It's past 9 o'clock. Thank you for allowing me to serve and for correcting me.